You know what? We all want love, but most of us don't want to date to get it because let's be honest, dating kind of sucks. But I fully believe it doesn't have to if we actually know what we're doing. Hi, I'm Kira Sabin, and this is Reinventing Dating, a smart and sweary podcast for all singles to learn the mindsets and skills to date with intention and confidence. Join me weekly as I break down the science and psychology behind what's working in our dating culture and what isn't. Every week, I'll bring a new topic, a trend, a skill, or mindset that can help us get out of our own way to learn how to date for relationships that we actually want. Because I fully believe and know that love isn't broken, but dating kind of is. So let's reinvent it together. Well, hello there, sugar pantses. It's Kira. Welcome to Reinventing Dating, but more importantly, the midlife conversations that I'm having right now. I realize that I keep saying I'm coming back the next day or the day after, and then life keeps showing up. But I figured that that's exactly what these podcasts are about life and relationships and looking at where we're at and the changes that are happening and what to do about it. So I'm not going to apologize. I'm just going to say I'm going to keep showing up and I'll be here when I can, as much as I can. And today on the podcast, I want to talk about change. I think that one of the biggest things about midlife is when we take time to reflect on what's worked, what hasn't, what we were hoping was going to happen by now, and it didn't, with our bodies changing and our lives changing, how we can do maybe this next phase better. And that all feels really hard. And in fact, before I started this podcast series, I went onto my Facebook and I just started a conversation. And there are 71 comments from a random conversation on Facebook when I said, hey, ladies who are in midlife, besides perimenopause, what's the hardest thing about being in this time? And what came up more than once was how hard it was sometimes to learn new things, but more importantly, to actually change them. Who feels that? And if we're already 40, 45, 50, 55, 60, can we actually make real change? Especially if you are a person who has been trying to become a better person for years and is not finding a ton of success or luck in it. What do I mean by that? I think all of us have been hearing about things over the last 5-10 years that we know we should do. Maybe that's mindfulness, maybe that's meditation, which I'm a fan of both of those. Maybe it's reaching out to friends and family more, whatever it is. Maybe there are things that we know we want to do, that we should do to maybe feel better or have a better life or have better relationships. And it's hard as fuck. And whether it is a lack of motivation, which I'm going to talk about in a few minutes, a lack of time, a lack of energy, or any of it, change can feel very hard. And I'm going to explain to you why, to the point of almost impossible. And in fact, I grew up during a time where I was just told on a regular basis, don't expect my parents to change, don't expect older people to change, because old dogs can't learn new tricks. So my most exciting announcement, is that's bullshit. That's absolutely not true. And it is scientifically proven to be untrue. There is something cool that happens inside of our brains, and it's called neuroplasticity. And neuroplasticity means that our brains can be rewired at any time. Now, here's the rub. The rub is when we've been doing something the same way, whether that be a thought, a belief, an action, a habit, if we've been doing it for a long time, that becomes an automatic process in our brain. It moves into the part of the brain where we don't have to think about it anymore. We are not even maybe conscious to it. I bet you don't think about step to step to step of brushing your teeth, right? You're not like, okay, now I need to pick up my toothbrush. Okay, now I need to put toothpaste on it. Okay, now no, you're just doing it, not thinking about it, and spitting it out, and you're done. That is an automatic process. Maybe making your coffee is an automatic process. Maybe driving to or from work feels like an automatic process, which is good and slightly scary. But what we don't know is that if we have been doing, saying, being a certain way for a really long time, why that feels so hard is because there's steps that we have to do that nobody's fucking taught you, because most of it's new information and research, to actually change. And one of the biggest things that was really important to me the last couple of months is I've literally self-reflected on my business, where I've succeeded, where I've failed, where I've made mistakes, what have I done well, what have I done not well. In doing that in your life and in your business, it takes a fucking toll. I'm not gonna lie. It's been a lot of growth, shall we call it? But let me say it this way, growing pains. Because in that process of change, you're questioning a lot, which feels scary and sometimes really gross. Turning 51 in the last week is the gift that keeps on giving, if we want to look at it this way or that way. But it shook me. Turning 50 and now being in my 50s has shook me to my core, because the greatest thing about this time is I'm just not wanting or willing to put up with shit anymore that I've put up with a lot in my past. The gift, if you kind of receive it in your 40s, is hopefully you take life a little less seriously. Hopefully you start realizing we're all just a speck of dust on this planet in a great big old universe, and that our day-to-day problems a lot of times are not really that significant, or maybe not as big of a deal as we thought they were when we were younger. But what also can happen in your 40s and 50 and 51 is that you start to look back at what you compromised on, what you didn't go after, what you wanted and were too scared to do. And doing Rom-Com Rescue, now watching a lot of these older movies, talking with somebody who's 15 years younger than me from an actual different generation, it is glaring the choices that I have made out of fear, the people I kept in my life that I shouldn't have, the times I should have said no, some of the bullshit that I accepted, all of it. And so the gift of this time is being able to go, I don't want this next fucking chapter to be like that. I don't want to have to go through the life growing pains that 20 something me went through. I don't want to do that again or keep doing it, because it is very humbling to look back at how you got to the place that you're at and then the choices that you made to get there. The best and hardest thing that I have ever done is to take a big look at my life, acknowledge my role, and do it differently moving forward. And that's easier said than done, especially when we're older. So maybe you've got to this point too. Maybe you're like, well, here I am. This first gig was okay, but it didn't really maybe turn out the way I wanted it to. Or maybe you're like, yeah, I've gotten a lot of the success I wanted or the things I wanted, and it's not fucking fulfilling. I'm not satisfied in any way. Whatever it is, the greatest thing that I have learned is that we can absolutely change now, but there are reasons why we do and why we don't. And I want to share them with you right now, because I don't think that we can have midlife conversations and not talk about the reflection and not talk about our need for change. Now, before I dig any more into change, I want to talk a little bit more about my own change journey, or just my own journey that some of you may know and a lot of you might not. But I think a lot of people meet me as a 51-year-old and think that I've always been this person. It's the farthest from the truth. So, a 3 to 5 minute bio about me. I grew up in a small town in southwest Wisconsin called Richland Center, 4,997 people. The closest city was like an hour away. That was Madison. That's where I live now. I grew up very sheltered in a town with zero diversity. If there were any LGBTQIA kids in my school, you certainly didn't talk about it because it was the 80s. I went to college at Luther College in Decorah, Iowa, which was honestly a lovely experience, but not very far outside of my small town comfort zone because I just went to a college in a slightly bigger small town. So after college, not sure what I wanted to do, I ended up on a couch at my friend Heather's college party. My back hurts just thinking about it. And I slept on one couch and her roommate's brother slept on the other one. And we just got to talking the next morning over, some kind of hangover breakfast or whatever we did back then. We certainly didn't drink water. And I said, "What do you do?" He's like, "Well, I'm actually in law school waiting to take my bar. But in the meantime, I work with kids on cruise ships." He's like, "They're always looking for people," because I told him that I had background in working at camps and things like that. And lo and behold, about 3 months later, I stepped onto a cruise ship for the first time in my life. I had never seen a cruise ship. I had never been outside the country except in college. I spent the summer in South Korea helping run a day camp for military children. So this very young, very naive person stepped onto a cruise ship, something she'd never even seen in real life except on Love Boat, which I loved because it was awesome. And I remember after my first 4 days, I went to the payphone in Miami. Yes, I said payphone. Called my sister and just started crying. I had not made any friends. People did not seem that interested in getting to know me. I felt really alone and out of place, like a fish out of water, which is funny because I was on a boat. Everybody around me seemed more worldly, more knowledgeable. I just felt like a hick. And probably the greatest thing my sister has ever said to me in that moment, and we were not necessarily that close at that time, but she just said, "How long is your contract for?" I said 6 weeks. She's like, "Kira, you can do anything for 6 weeks. Give it a try." Now, I don't know if that is high-end motivation, but it was definitely good Wisconsin work ethic conversation. Enough that I'm like, okay, I can kind of stick this out. But by the next week, I was making out with a cute English guy, had started making some friends, and that became a part of my life for 5 years. I worked on cruise ships for 3 years and then took off for a little while and then came back and worked for another 2. But that experience, whether you like cruises or not, working on a cruise ship for me at the age of 22, 23, 24 was life-changing for me. I finally got to be around diversity and thank goodness people were okay with me asking questions, people from other countries, other cultures. I had never known people like that. I'm so glad that I was able to make my first gay friends there and they've talked to me more about their experiences so I could learn more. Because I can tell you this, that was not part of my childhood at all. The person that I am today at 51 years old, I've been on 5 out of the 7 continents. I have met people from all around the world, had incredible conversations, went after coaching, and I have fought so fucking hard for it because this isn't how I was raised. I was not raised open-minded. I was not raised accepting of everyone. I was not raised in a community that was forward thinking. Everything that I am, not everything, but a lot of the things that I am are because I pushed myself out of my comfort zone and tried new things. I remember the moment I tried sushi, and a lot of cruise ships was me trying things for the first time, but being too embarrassed to tell anybody that I'd never tried those things before. My very cool, eclectic Canadian friends, they had gone places and seen things and done things. And things that they had done 1,000 times, I had never even seen before. It's probably good that I was a little too embarrassed to say what I'd never done, like maybe eaten or tried or whatever, because it kind of pushed me to just do it. What's like my favorite food now? Sushi, poke bowls. I'd like to think that I am highly open minded to the world, to people, to their stories, to empathy, to compassion. But this didn't happen by reading books, by listening to podcasts. It happened in real life, surrounding myself with different people, different culture, trying things again and again and again, sometimes practicing them again and again until it became part of my identity, part of my world. So now that you know a little bit about my background, I want to talk to you about what I've learned about change, how it absolutely backs up everything I just told in that story, and what you need to know and do and put into place to make changes in your life. If there are things that you are not happy with, if there are things that don't feel like they fit anymore, if you feel stuck, if you feel in a rut, I'm going to give you all the information you need right now. Now, that doesn't mean it's the tools. That doesn't mean it's the skills. That's the practice, because that's going to be part of this conversation. But I am going to give you some good information and food for thought. One of the things I read, because I always love to do a little research, and I will make sure I put any articles that I reference here, but human beings have the capacity for growth, learning, and personal development throughout their entire lives. It doesn't end at a certain age. In fact, most of us change our behaviors, attitudes, and perspectives over the course of our lifetime. Exposure to new ideas, experiences, or information often makes it so. We may have to reevaluate our values, challenge previously held assumptions, and adopt new perspectives based on what we have experienced through our lives. However, as I'm sure you hear every year when New Year's comes around, because I've certainly seen this, only about 10% of people who make a resolution keep it. 10%. That's not that high. And in fact, we're changing all of the time, but why does it feel so hard to make active changes in directions we want to go? Part of it is we have leaned on this idea of willpower as being the only thing that we need for change. I feel like what I believed in the conversations I've had with clients and friends is that we were kind of given information, right? Like, this is what you should do instead of what you're doing. And then you either have the willpower to make that change, or you don't have the willpower to make that change. Maybe that's a new habit. Maybe that's working out or changing your diet. Maybe that's whatever. Willpower is a very big thing for me growing up. And I have constantly berated myself for when I want to make changes in ways that sometimes I not even know I want to, but I need to. And I just can't make it stick. I just can't go from A to B. And then I get into this weird little rumination spiral in my head where, why even try? Because you've been trying to do this, this, and this, and it still hasn't worked. I think I see people doing that for dating a lot, but I think I see people doing that for lots of things a lot. They tried it one time or twice, but they just are like, well, I guess I don't have the willpower to do it. Here's the good news. All of that's bullshit. It's not true. That's not how we change it all. At all. And in fact, a couple of things. I heard for years and years, it takes 21 days to create a new habit. So I would like sludge through and think, if I can just fucking do this for 21 days, it will then be ingrained in me and I will do it for the rest of my life. Wasn't young Kira just adorable? I know. But let me tell you this, I never even made it to that 21 days. The huge changes that I was constantly trying to make without any kind of setup for success, I would go full bore, all in, black or white. This is the way it is. Here's who I am from now on. And it would be so terrible. I would be thrown so out of my comfort zone. My body would feel so much like shit if it was eating change or whatever it is, that I would lick my wounds, stop it, and then just feel sorry for myself. That clearly I am not one of the people who gets to have nice things because I don't have the willpower to do it. and everybody else does and I don't, and I'm shit and they're cool and yada, yada, yada. But what I learned was I didn't actually know how to change, and willpower didn't have that much to do with it at all. So let's get into why people don't change. So let's get down to the deeper reasons besides, I guess I don't have willpower, of why we actually don't change. And the number one thing is what I love to talk about, which is fear. People may fear the unknown. They might fear failing, losing control, or even change itself. We may fear that if we change, we might lose some of the people around us. And this fear may stem from past experiences or just natural human tendency to prefer routine and predictability, which our brain does prefer. That's also why I tell people to not start new relationships when they're going through tough stuff, because a relationship is change. And if you're over here trying to deal with your life blowing up, boy, it's sure hard to also build a new relationship. But fear, although a very real thing, can also be looked at and pushed up against. That's what bravery is. We can do hard things when it makes sense for us to do. Another reason that people don't change is we feel isolated and walled off. Sometimes growing up feeling unloved or unaccepted or unsafe can force us to build a wall. Now, those walls might be helpful in childhood, but a lot of the times when we hit adulthood, those walls aren't necessary anymore. But we're so used to them being there, we don't know how to take them down because it seems scary and vulnerable. And letting people in or letting people see us for who we really are when we maybe were neglected or didn't feel love or feel safe, that may feel crazy pants in our brain. But you might find yourself safe, but you're probably also alone. Even if you're in a relationship, you may not be close to people. And that's holding you back from a better version of yourself. The next reason we don't change, you can't see the path. You know what you want, but you can't see how the fuck to get there, how to figure it out to go from A to B to C to D to get to E. You can't. And by the way, this could be neurodivergent. You may not be able to see the steps that you have to take to make that change. And so we just try to do it all, and then we end up doing nothing. But also the problem with not seeing the path. When you've spent years living a certain way, that way becomes your reality and your worldview. Other people may seem to be living on a different planet, and you can't understand how they got there. It's so hard to attain something that you can't even imagine. Another reason that we don't change is because we are comfortably uncomfortable. People may get used to something and find it normal and comforting. Once again, we tend to prefer a predictable outcome that is negative rather than an uncertain outcome. Who hears that? Who feels that? I think that is a massive thing in our society. We may go, I know I don't want to be in this relationship anymore, or I know I don't want to be in this job anymore, but I would rather choose what I know, even if it's shitty, than to try something that's in the unknown, because the unknown feels unsafe. But that's the whole reasoning behind the life you want is on the other side of your comfort zone. If we're so used to something that it becomes normal and comforting, but it isn't working for us anymore, we have to find ways to change to get out of it. Because I can promise you that time that is uncertain is temporary and not fun. I'm not going to pretend like it's fun, but boy, it can be rewarding and satisfying and motherfucking helpful. The next reason that we may not be changing is because of depression. This is a real thing. And I found something online that says depression interferes with growth in 3 important ways. It saps your energy and motivation, which makes it harder to take on a challenge. It makes you isolate yourself so that you have less support to change. And it makes you feel hopeless, so there seems no point in trying to change. That's fucking hard. And as somebody who's been struggling with depression for a good majority of my life, I can tell you, I know the questions to ask myself that I know I then have depression. One of them is when even my favorite things to do don't sound good anymore. Then I know, uh-oh, I might have depression. The next thing is I worry about everything in the world. Shit that I cannot stop or change or help. I worry about it all. Those are some of the signs that I know I'm depressed. I'll also say that depression medication has been a game changer in my life again and again and again. And I'm also going to say that ketamine, low dose ketamine, which I've been doing now for over a year daily, has changed everything for me. And one of the reasons that I decided to move forward with it, even though I was scared, was because I got the science. And the science was that ketamine helps our neuroplasticity, the very thing I talked about at the beginning of this podcast. Neuroplasticity helps us rewire our brain. The more our brain is like plastic, it's easier to rewire. That's what ketamine does. When you do a low dose ketamine, it is helping change become easier. It's changed my life, guys. If anybody ever wants to talk about it, you can reach out to me. You can email me. I will share my experiences, and I will tell you that for as much as sertraline or Wellbutrin worked for me in the past, nothing changed me as much as this has. And I have a whole new viewpoint towards this kind of therapy and it being probably a big part of our future. The next reason that we may not change is a lack of support. Honestly, it's really hard to change behavior on your own because you can't see the things that get in your way, the beliefs, the habits, because it's easier when we see other people also having success. We know that we can. I just watched this kid, this 9-year-old kid, I believe, if I'm correct, but I'm pretty fucking close if I'm not, do back to back. So actually triple, I want to say 720s in front of Tony Hawk. And it took him until his adulthood to do that once. And it was a big fucking deal. This kid just went back and forth and did it 3 times in front of Tony Hawk, 9 years old. One of the reasons I love Tony Hawk is because he was there celebrating this kid, thinking it was awesome. But this happens all the time in sports, in music, in a lot of things in our culture, that we have to have a forerunner trying these new things so that other people know it's doable. That's what support and community does when you're trying to make changes. You can see yourself in others, which helps self-reflection. When they share their stories, you may see yourself. That's part of the reason that I share stories about myself on this podcast. It isn't because I like looking like an asshole. We also need support and community on our tough days to keep us going, for accountability. I think that one of the toughest things, and I mentioned this the other day on the Midlife Conversations, that Gen X are going to have a problem with is we don't fucking like to ask for help. Growing up as latchkey kids, growing up with 2 parents working, we learned quickly to not ask for things because no one's around to ask. So what does that mean? That means that we are so uncomfortable asking for help, needing things, that we would rather shut down, have a shitty life, not work on ourselves, not change, rather than get some support around something you want to work on or need help with. And then I brought up this very thing a little bit ago. But the final reason that we don't change is anger at ourselves. When we think we don't have the willpower, when we've tried and probably not set ourselves up for success, we self-direct our anger, and it has a way of breaking us down. Somebody wrote here, like drops of water on a stone, there's a gradual erosion of your self-worth and your self-esteem. How can you change when you don't feel you are worth the effort, the energy, sometimes the money, the time to actually change? Who noticed that willpower didn't come up once of reasons why you're not changing? Once. Because it's not about willpower. It's these underlying beliefs, underlying motivation gaps, knowledge gaps that are keeping us stuck. And I'm going to be back here tomorrow for real, unless my power goes out or my internet goes down, which has fucking happened in the last couple days, telling you how we do change. But I hope before that episode, you're able to step back and give yourself a little space, a little grace, a little compassion for all the things that maybe you tried and didn't work out or didn't become the habit that you hoped, and that it wasn't for any of the reasons that you're probably beating yourself up over. I will be back tomorrow to tell you how we get from point A to point B in the smartest, simplest, easy ways possible so that you can look at this time in your life and do it better. The gift of this time is saying, for me, at least where I'm at, 51 years are gone. What am I going to do with this next stage? What am I going to do with these precious years left? All the promises of retirement and everything else that may or may not happen. I don't want to wait any longer to live a better life. I don't want to put my life on hold for 15, 16, 20, even 10 years to hope that I will then be happy. I already played that game in my 20s and 30s. The game where I wouldn't ask for what I need, so I just had unfulfilling friendships and relationships. That game of hoping people could read my mind. The game of thinking that somebody would know how to love me without me telling them. That if I just waited around being the good girl, that all the things that I wanted and felt that I deserved would happen. Until I had to wake up in my 40s and now 50s, knowing that none of this shit happens unless I do it. I went after my relationship and worked hard to get here. I built this business, which is the bane of my existence sometimes for the last 16 years, but I've had to keep showing up. And honestly, I'm so fucking proud because I didn't even know I could do this. I'm not playing the game anymore where I am quiet. I don't take up space. I hope people figure me out. I'm not doing that shit anymore because I know it's not real and I know it doesn't work. I want to put my time, my energies, my action into things that feel good and fulfill me and bring real joy to my life. I want to use midlife as motivation to do better and not just cry about what I lost. Who's with me? All right, guys, that's it for today. If you liked this, please subscribe so you don't miss any of the future episodes with this kind of genius. And also share it with everybody you know. Let them know you like this podcast. It's helpful and it gets it out there. Finally, if you love it, please leave a review, whether it's just some stars on Apple or Spotify, or writing down what you really love about this podcast. I read every single one. They fucking make my day. You become a hero in my mind, and it just makes the world a little bit better place. All right, guys, I'll be here next week. And until then, meet love halfway.